Welcome to the Market Mindset. We are the hub for news, results, and CEO interviews focusing the junior commodities sector. We provide market analysis and perspective that will help position you for solid returns. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can help support us by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and clicking the notification bell. For more info, you can visit our website. All links are in the description below. Now let's get into today's video.
Hey everyone, today we want to talk a little bit about microchips, microprocessors, but as you know, we talk a lot about issues about, the decline in the West. Is there issues with that, with fiat currency, all the issues that we talk about with supply chain. And at the same time, people wonder, where's the good news? Where's the upside? And a good place to look is always, kind of what we're building out in infrastructure. And there's lots of positives with Build Back Better to build up the infrastructure that we need. And one place specifically that's absolutely critical is in, especially in this modern economy, is microchip processing. And we wanted to touch on that because there's an issue there. As you know, right now, getting a lot of microchips is very tough. And there are shortages and there's going to be issues moving forward. We wanted to address this and look at what as a general primer, what's going on in the US. And Austin's going to walk us through some of the things that he's found. So we're looking forward to talking about that. And I guess before we jump into that, Austin, is probably just knock off the concept of Moore's Law right off the bat.
Yeah, so which is an interesting sort of idea that the exponential continual growth. And maybe if you lead on Moore's Law, and then I'll kind of take us through the chip production.
Yeah, so Moore's Law is like there's an empirical relationship there. It's not like an actual scientific or a physical law when we think of like the law of gravity or something like that. But it does kind of suggest, and it's an observance that there's been a doubling of chip capacity and power, basically. And in that circuitry, there's a small amount of space on those chip boards. I mean, they're small enough as it is. And the more you add to it and the more power that you need, not only the hotter do they get, they start to melt. It's obviously, it reaches a maximum capacity. And there's a great graph that kind of shows that doubling. And it did. I think it doubled. I think they suggested it would be double every 10 years at the beginning. And then through the 70s, the prediction was 1975. The prediction was made every year that it would double. Now, it doesn't anymore. I think in the last decade, it hasn't doubled, but there are parts of the chain of making one that still doubles. But in any event, you can see in the graph here, it's just it is incredible growth. And with that, we've had incredible growth in that sector, and the ability of computers to quantify things at such an incredible level. And we use these in everyday life. But it's just an interesting thing to keep in mind that pace is incredible. And technology is sped up to such a huge rate. And imagine with this metaverse and everything, the incredible need of visuals with like say NVIDIA chips for your graphics. This is going to be growing and growing and growing. And we're going to tie it all together with some of the companies that we talk about too, that make this possible. But it's always important, if you're going to talk about semiconductors, is to look at this Moore's Law and kind of look at, when we think of like a phone from 2007, where we're sitting at now compared to then. I mean, it's incredible what we can do with our phone now. So with that as our kind of foundation, Moore's Law is, we could do a whole talk on just Moore's Law. But just to get a basic understanding of that, I think that's a good primer to have Austin talk to us a little bit about what's happening, what's the U.S. facing right now.
Yes, you mentioned obviously like the idea that it's doubling over time, and that necessarily it hasn't happened in the last decade, but that growth is still increasing. And IBM still projects 50% increase in the amount of microchips used over the next decade. So 50% increase is still a massive amount. It's not obviously doubling, but it's still quite a substantial increase. Now, what we kind of have to look at first is why did it happen this way? How did we get into this place? Now, there's a couple of contributing factors. Obviously, I would say the biggest one being the over time due to the volatility of the chip market. As you kind of pointed out there in the 70s and 80s, it was doubling the amount of semiconductors, microchip processors needed. That kind of slowed down. So as volatility kind of shifted against the market for it, more of those jobs started being moved overseas. Obviously to China. Taiwan's a huge manufacturer of semiconductors, Singapore as well. And then obviously you get hit by the COVID situation and the entire world economy shuts down and the demand for working from home technology massively skyrockets. And all of a sudden, everyone needs to upgrade their computer. People who are running off just, their 10 or 12-year-old laptop for a long time are all of a sudden going, hey, I need something that can actually get the job done here because it looks like I'm going to be stuck in my house for a while. And on top of that, you've got kids at home who need to be entertained. And the easiest form of entertainment we have access to now is not perhaps the way you grew up, or certainly not how the early part of my childhood would have gone. And it's much more technology dependent rather than the idea of go outside and play with your friends kind of thing. And some kids weren't even allowed to do that over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But as kind of this demand resurged, it started to really hinder kind of in the West when we realized that we don't have the capacity to produce these at the level that we used to, or the level to keep up with the current demand. The US only produces, I believe it's about 12% of the global chips that are sold worldwide. That's down from 37% is what it was at in 1990. So in the last 30 years, that's a pretty massive drop for a country that's population's only increased by another 40 million over that time span. So
yeah,
so that's kind of the situation that we end up at. And you kind of scratch your head and wonder, well, how the hell did we get ourselves into this position? And like I said, it's because you're moving these jobs overseas a lot. But the important thing to remember is that it's incredibly expensive to build these facilities and develop them. Now,
yes.
Building one of these facilities on average costs about 12 to 15 billion. They take roughly 2 years to build, and they're not cash flow positive for about a decade after that. So it's a massive, massive investment to be setting up now. Where we're going to get sort of kicked in the butt here is if we had been making some of those investments over the last 20 years, we'd see profitable businesses that would be really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Really succeeding on a massive front right now if they were set up for it. Now we're obviously behind the eight ball and playing a bit of catch up.
Yes. And I mean, it's just good to reiterate that the supply chain issues of trying to ship things around has become very apparent to people. And it's not because COVID broke things. COVID didn't. I mean, it was regulations that stopped people from shipping things that broke the system. But that system was coming to an end. I would say I'd make that argument because the idea of being able to ship jobs over here, manufacture over here, send this over here, assemble it in Mexico, then send it back. Listen, that doesn't make any sense. There needs to be a better way to move forward. And I look at this whole COVID event as highlighting the weaknesses that we need to address and fix, which is part why I like any massive infrastructure plan. I don't love a lot of government intervention. I know we're going off on a tangent, but anything that really sets us forward, moving forward, should be addressed and has to be addressed. And the sooner we can start solving problems, the better. And that's starting to happen in the U.S. Already, because they're starting to realize that not only do they not have these critical metals and elements, they don't have the critical supply chain. Chips, integrated chips, are in everything from your obviously your phone and your TV and everything we use on a daily basis, and all the fun stuff, the video games. And and as you said, with COVID, everyone went out and bought a camera so they could all do Zoom calls and team calls and all that, which meant a stronger graphics card, which takes a lot more memory and power. NVIDIA chip cards were sold out because they use them for Bitcoin mining. So they're used at a huge rate that you don't even think about. Never mind the fact that all of your weaponry, planes, stealth fighters, bombs, Patriot missiles, whatever, all of that is all chip driven. And if you're not making them on your or with a buddy nation, like a real good friend, where are you making them? What's going on? So that kind of sets the stage up for what's happening here moving forward. And there's a lot happening. There's lots, not to give any spoilers away, but This is more of a white pill type of situation.
Yeah, there is, because there are a lot of positive steps that can be taken, and we're seeing the U.S. certainly more so than Canada addressing it and trying to meet this head on. Now, one thing kind of parallel I'll draw for people, because people might be saying they're saying, okay, well, I've got my TV, I've got my computer. How's this really going to affect me? I'm not buying Patriot missiles this week. I'm full up on those. But two important ones to highlight, the easy kind of examples to point to. Obviously, Sony cutting the production of its PlayStation 5 by another 1 million units this year. So clearly they're expecting this problem to persist well through 2022. Yeah. Ford as well. A lot of people will have heard recently about Ford scaling back their production and focusing mainly on its Expedition SUV and the Super Duty truck. Now, people kind of initially thought, okay, well, is this just because those are the vehicles that Ford sells the most of? Obviously, the F-150 is their most selling vehicle, and I think it's like 80% of Ford's total sales. Don't quote me on that number. I'm giving you a rough estimate. But what the actual problem is from Ford is that they're seeing these semiconductor allocation and not being able to meet it. That they don't have the microchip capacity to keep producing the amount of vehicles that they even have the demand for. So they're having to cut that back again as well. So it's going to affect everything across the board. And we're going to start to see a lot of these kind of shortages, I think. And then depending on who you ask, how long is this going to go on for? If you look at one example is that I've got here, the AMD CEO said, that this time this shortage is actually going to be a bit different, that we could expect this thing to go all the way through 2022. CNET's chief executive, that's Intel CNET chief executive, said that we're going to see this chip shortage persist somewhat through 2022. Then you've got IBM's chief executive said, no, this is probably going to go on through 2023 and 2024. So no one really quite has a gauge on exactly how long this is going to last. But I mean, it's very clear that it's going to keep making an impact.
Absolutely. And I think look at the gains, and Tesla's an easy one because people know it all. They know a lot about the story and the technology in Tesla. And think of the electric capacity it requires, the circuitry, the boards to have an electric car that's hooked up to a battery. But not only that, now you want a self-driving autonomous car that you're working on. What kind of power and circuitry does that require? And then expand that across, if they were even to try to attempt to meet any of their goals of 2030 having half the cars electric or whatever the number is, that is a massive growth rate. I mean, it's huge. So even if someone says, I don't buy it, even the attempt is going to need, and we already know, and let me back that up by saying this as well. At COP 26, they said that they're allocating and pledging $175 trillion toward fighting climate change. Now, that is a meaningless term, but I mean, that could be anything. That means like any kind of change in regard to weather, but that is a huge sector. I mean, that's everything from, your cell phone to weather. It doesn't matter. But anyways, that's a huge sector. Yeah. And the world economy is about 96 trillion. So they're willing to pledge money they don't even have. And that's not even being created. But that gives you a sense.
Nothing new.
That's nothing new. They'll print it, but that means they have to create the value. And a lot of it does come from thin air, but you still have to have a value. So to meet that expectation, they're going to be driving things up. And if you think inflation is an issue now, that statement of pledging that level of number moving forward means there has to be massive growth in certain areas. And it's good to see, well, what are they doing? Like, I mean, in the US, you go, what's some of the solutions? Are companies coming back to the US? Are they building plants? Are they announcing things? These are some of the things that people would wonder, has the US just fallen along the wayside? Are they too far behind China to not even bother anymore and whatnot? And that's not the case. So we're seeing that there's a plan it's already started, but is not kind of talked about as much. So maybe kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll give credit where credit is due. I know we like to bash on the Biden administration quite a bit when we talk about it, but they actually have come out in full kind of force and saying, hey, we need to really ramp up our production. We need to start centralizing this. We need to get this back on home soil and really develop it properly so that we can continue to meet these needs. And one kind of huge investment that we saw was Intel is going to be building a $50 billion project plant in Ohio for producing these chips right at home. And I love to see that kind of thing. And government incentives are going to be a part of kind of building this as well. And the US has said they're open to looking at that and trying to build that out and what that might potentially actually look like. But they're clearly kind of developing a strategy in place for how they can meet this, how they can tackle this supply chain issue. And then one really interesting thing, and we wanted to kind of tie it into companies and how that we look at and how they can help meet these needs, is I know you kind of initially brought up Desert Mountain Energy and said, hey, there's a helium prospect in play to this that can actually fit in very nicely.
Yes. Yeah. So let me jump into that, because I think it was back in March, Reuters reported that Taiwanese Semiconductor is spending $100 billion in the US for chip making. And now that is a big number, $100 billion. And they announced that, I think, just after Intel. So they didn't want Intel to get all the good news. And they're like, no, wait, we're doing the same. But I'd known already, because when I was researching Desert Mountain Energy a couple of years ago, and noticed that there was an article about Arizona and about a $20 to $25 billion project that was already started or announced, and it was starting that last summer, of Taiwanese Semiconductor in Arizona. And the link there is for all of that, whether it's 5G or data storage or anything that you need to cool down circuitry, as we mentioned, and you need inert gas, which is helium. Helium is perfect for it. So there's a tie-in there, and we'd kind of shown people, here's the use of helium that you don't really think of. I mean, a large component of it is still healthcare, so like X-rays and what do you call it, fMRIs, that type of stuff. But there's a huge component for data storage, massive data farms, of course, in crypto data mining, but also in chip making. So very interesting to see this build out in Arizona, where you have a company like Desert Mountain Energy who's saying we're going to be vertically integrated. They already have signed what do you call it, offtake agreements with the U.S. government to sell helium back to them. But also, there's no NDA that I know of with Taiwanese Semiconductor, but that seems like an obvious natural fit. They're going to be right in your backyard. You can deliver right to them down the road. So that's kind of where I saw that relationship, and I thought, oh, this is interesting for them to be spending that kind of money down in Arizona. That's really optimistic. So to hear the Ohio plan with Intel, also very exciting and optimistic.
Yeah, it really shows that they're going to tackle this head on and try to meet it. And there's a great graph that we have, if we can get it pulled up, on the potential impact of government incentives on the semiconductor manufacturing position. If we can get it pulled up, great. If not, I'll kind of just walk us through a couple of the numbers on it. It says, okay, what are the actuals from 2010 to 2020? Okay, here it is. This is perfect. So we've got the current actuals. We're saying U.S. capacity is about 10 to 12%. If you exclude China, it's 12%. If you include China, it's 10%. So that's a way to kind of look at it. Their current global ranking is a number 5 in the world at making currently. That's where they stand. If status quo stays as it is, that's projected to drop to 6% of the global share by 2030. Yeah. Still, that would keep them at number 5 in the world. That's if nothing changes. Now, if we were to say there's a $20 billion government program, which, I mean, we know that they're more than willing to spend that kind of money if we look at the infrastructure bill that they have in place, the Build Back Better plan, that would jump that number up from projected 6% to 14%, 24% if you exclude China from that number. And that would take the global ranking to number 3, obviously number 2 if you were to exclude China. Then if you were to bump that investment package up to $50 billion, you could see that growth actually get up to 24% of the global share of chip making, which would be massive, massive. That's essentially enough to cover the U.S. demand for it, no questions asked. The U.S. would be able to meet their own demands. They'd be able to bump up their new processing facilities up to about 19 in the U.S. They currently sit at 9, so we get an extra 10 out of that. And obviously that would take them up to number 2 in the world, number 1 if you were to exclude China from those numbers as well. So it doesn't, a $50 billion government program sounds like a lot, but it really to essentially make the U.S. self-sufficient on the semiconductor and microchip production side of things it seems like a worthwhile strategy and plan to me.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I like this when you take control of your own destiny this way. I talked about this before, not only with like chips, but specifically in mining. This is like helium is on the critical, gas, but it's a critical mineral element. There's a list that they have of critical ones, rare earths and vanadium, things like that are on it that they don't have a big supply of. China does, and that they need to get a handle on. Having chips being made in the U.S. again, that's a huge optimistic sign. The other one I'd throw in there that is definitely required would be pharmaceutical drugs. They have to start making them at home. We'll leave that whole sector alone, but that needs to be, that can't be done elsewhere, and certainly can't be done in China. No offense, China, but no. So, moving forward, it's great to see that they're taking control. Now, I know a lot of people get annoyed and they get pissed and they go, all this government spending is inefficient. It's terrible. It's fascist because it's government working with companies. And let me just reiterate that as government and companies work hand in hand all of the time. There is no pure capital market. They've been working together, in every capacity for decades and decades and decades. So pretending that it's been any other way in the U.S., it has always been that way. They work synergistically, maybe not as blatantly, as corruptly as you see today, say with media. That's the ugly side of where it can go, sure. But the country investing in itself, no, that's a good thing. That's what we should be doing. You should be helping to build infrastructure for your people and to build it up. And this is, regardless whether you like it or not, the Great Reset is happening. I'm not pretending like I know everything of what that entails or looks like, because the World Economic Forum has their plan, but they may not be able to meet all of that. And they may not even have any interest really of meeting all of it. But we know some of the stuff they want to do. And we certainly know the amount of money that's going to be pushed in certain directions. Like I said, that is that colossal wave of creation being created. And if you're left behind, you're going to get left behind in this. It's going to happen. Now, will it succeed in all of its aspects? I don't know. I can't tell the future, but they're going to make the attempt. And I think that's what we keep on harping on people is there is an opportunity here. We kind of map it out very well in the market model mindset as to what that looks like and how to get involved. And this, of course, is going into our subscribers section for people. And we're going to have more of these for subscribers that we talk in detail as to how did we come about our thesis as to what's happening. This fits in perfectly for what we see. And I could do a whole show on this whole left-right dichotomy about, fascist government and overspending by government. It's like, listen, government should spend money, and they need to work with businesses. They have to. I mean, they've enforced regulation here and there, and there's always the fight. Is there too much regulation? Is there too little? And listen, I tend to be on the side of less regulation is better. You need to protect to some degree. But investment side, of course they should invest. And but there should be more, it should be more clean, and it's certainly a lot more transparent, and shouldn't be what do you call it, mixing over into the authoritarian world. Which my only thing where I'd say when people talk about the current situation and it's quote unquote fascist is this certainly a much more prevalence of authoritarian rule, certainly in Canada and Australia, definitely half of the US, and that is disconcerting. That's the negative side. But overall, saying there's parts of Build Back Better that I don't like 100%. And that's the authoritarian type of stuff. But the infrastructure stuff is critical. And, I would love to see something like that where the government in Canada came out and said, listen, we're incentivizing people to invest in technology. I mean, we've got great technology in Canada that hardly anyone even knows about, to get people really interested in our market, to drive the capital markets to solve a lot of these solutions. That's how every problem gets solved. They never have gotten, I mean, I'll I'll ask people to send me stuff that you think government have solved as a problem. And they're going to send me back social stuff. They're going to send me back social stuff, which is the somewhat feely good things. And those can be easily discredited as well, because you can make the case that the things that you think you're doing where you're helping, you're actually harming the person a lot more in the long run. Because it has to be that you're empowering people to be a part of something and incentivizing to want to be a part, with a bit of a backstop. But if you are doing something else, you're only harming people. And that's a whole other show altogether. But I wanted to kind of show that, yes, we've seen a lot of these issues and problems, and people get worried, like, oh my God, is this the end of the West? And I mean, we're teetering for sure. There's lots of issues, but when you see this kind of investment of technology, these are smart people. Like, they're not stupid people. If they were all leaving the U.S. and saying, well, you know what, the U.S. is done, you wouldn't be seeing that investment. You wouldn't see chip makers saying, it's not a cheap place to make stuff. Let me just reiterate that. I mean, you can go to cheaper places and make these things. So that's a very good bonus for people to kind of go, it's not all dark right now. We're going through a dark period, but there could be light at the end of the tunnel. And the more we kind of look at this type of thing where it might help people to alleviate that, you follow the money. Once again, it's like most things. Where's that money flowing and ebbing and flowing to? That's going to give you a sense as to what these elites and globalists and whatnot, what they're up to. And like you said, building one of these semiconductor plants is not a cheap investment. It's massive.
Yeah, well, I know I kind of talked about, a $50 billion government incentive. That's nothing to the government. And that's kind of true. But yeah, it's incredibly expensive to build out one of these plants. I mean, look at Intel, what they're spending on that plant in Ohio is going to be about a $50 billion project for them. That alone is going to massively increase the U.S.'s capabilities on this front. And the point I'm trying to make is they're going to spend your $50 billion anyway. So let's get them to spend it on some stuff that's actually going to be beneficial and really help, boost the economy at home and help meet a critical need that they have going forward. So if we could see them really continuing to kind of target issues like this and develop solutions, it's encouraging to see. And hey, well, like I said, we'll bash them when the opportunity presents itself, but we'll also give them some praise. And if they can continue to move in the right direction on this, then that would be awesome to see.
Yeah, 100%, because we've got too much of this totally black and white type thing. Like, you have to hate everything that happens to come from and it's like, that's just silly. It's ridiculous. There's so much good in this Build Back Better that I get annoyed when pundits are out there and they're just saying, oh, it's total disaster. It's like, no, there's tons and tons of good stuff in there, like great stuff that's going to really help the country. And that isn't me just pie in the sky. There's tons of crap in there. Like, don't get me wrong. But once again, you focus in on these really good things that can not only bring jobs, like, there's so much work that has to be done. Like, there's so much. So you just say, okay, great. We've got a plan. There's going to be money spent. Let's get people back to work now. Half of the world has already opened up. China has been open right from day one almost. Like, their growth last year was 8%. Now, they are locking down some cities here and there, and they're doing their things, but they have internal conflict there. People think that it's just some sort of like a monolith without any issues. There's issues in China, but you don't even know why they shut down cities. It could be for any number of reasons. And as you can see, the whole Hong Kong issue kind of disappeared overnight whenever they introduced the pandemic. So when things calm down, there's still going to be problems, but they want back to work very quickly. And it's important that we do the same as soon as possible and start shifting people's mindset away from the whole fear porn that's been going on and start building things and start getting back to work and getting excited about this. And if they're going to spend some money, even if it was half that amount, this is exciting. It gives, and it's, I can't speak to Canada because we don't have anything like that. We don't have, I don't even know of any plan that they're up to, but the major economy is the US. So that's where we want to focus. And this is a good light in a dark tunnel with lots of issues that you can look at something and go, oh, okay, that's really interesting that is happening. That's going forward.
It is for sure. And you mentioned even like just half that amount would take the U.S. production from the 10% it sits at right now to 14%. right? So, and I mean, if you factor China out of that equation, it takes it from 12% to 24%. So that's a massive increase alone. And, you know, yeah, you mentioned Canada as well. What could our kind of path be forward? Hopefully it's get a little bit more of a business friendly leadership going on and
Yeah.
strengthen our trade ties with the US. And then we can piggyback off this investment being done in the US
100%.
as well.
Now, I'll give kudos to the Quebec government because they're on it. They know, and they are really in favor of the energy idea, the green and clean tech area. They are not unaware. Let's just put it that way. They're very pro mining. They understand the energy situation, and that's a big positive. And we do need more of that. And I mean, for example, I was just doing an article. It should come out soon on vanadium. You know, it's kind of like graphene. It's been a wonder material. It has lots of potential. But within Build Back Better, there is $5 billion allocated towards battery storage, energy storage, and that type of thing. There's going to be grants that they're going to give out to companies, like public and private, that are allocated in like 50 to 100 million slots. That's a lot of money. And that can go to any company that's looking to solve this issue and to be creating batteries. Like if you're a small junior and you're able to get a $50 million grant, that's 50 million that comes in that doesn't change the dilution of your share structure. That's huge.
Massive. Yep.
That's massive. And then if you want to see like how do you inject money into some companies that desperately need it without blowing up their capital structure, well, there's an interesting way. And I bet you people that are a bit more right-wing and economic and savvy and whatnot won't be screaming fascism there if they can see 50 million injected without blowing out a capital structure. That'll make a lot of people in the mining sector very happy very quickly. So will that happen? I don't know. But I mean, they have a grant program. It is open. They're taking applications. And that's what we need to see. We need to see more of this to drive all of these key components, all these metals and minerals that help to make this entire future that we want to see. And the sooner we can get through the struggle of that to actually like working hard to building all of this to get to where we want to go, that I think that's something that people can get behind, is that they go, we're back to work. We're focused on this battle of doing this rather than this limbo. And we're still in limbo of, and that's really, that chaos I think is causing a lot of issues right now.
Yeah, and the longer you sit in this kind of limbo state, the more heightened people's tensions and emotions get as well. So it'd be a better path forward for everyone if we could kind of retool and retarget this this new approach forward.
Good. Well, we wanted to keep these about like 30 minutes for our subscribers. Is there anything you want to leave with us that we've missed?
I think we kind of wrapped it all up perfectly. Hey, just keep pushing these kind of issues. Talk about it with people that you talk to in your friend circles and business circles, and however you can keep getting these stories out there. Right, that's the important thing to just keep talking and having these conversations.
Yes. Now we have Alex Barr who just put in a comment, and this is excellent. 5G is a big part of this Build Back Better, and Tarana and have a great technology. So Tarana, Tarana. They have a great technology for wireless internet built on chips provided by Eternity. Sorry, some of these names are tough to say for me. And we can see here, it's a patented design. You know what? We're going to take a look at that. Thank you so much, Alex. We may not have time right now to do that, but we're definitely going to take a peek at this. I really appreciate it. But we want to get that up. So, if you're out there right now as well, take a look as well. Get back to us, send us a message, and we'll certainly get back to you, Alex. I really appreciate you putting that comment in. Sometimes this is how we hear about companies too. Like someone reaches out to us and says, "Hey guys, have you looked at this company?" And that's what's so amazing, that we have this connectivity now. And when people see that you're excited and really interested in it, you get situations like this. So 5G is a huge part of this story, and the Internet of Things. I mean, the amount of work going into that is massive. It's huge. That's a whole other sector, which we'll talk about as well. That has a lot of, people are scared because there's a lot of, big brothers watching, but there's also a lot of amazing, very cool, synergistic things that we can do to really aid our health, our wellness, you name it. So, like all things, in times of great chaos and uncertainty, there's the fear and then there's the excitement. And, we have to balance those both out. But 5G offers a promise of huge possibilities. and that is pretty exciting. And we will get into that as a whole separate show. But thank you so much, Alex. We're going to take a look at that company and see what they're up to.
Yep, I've got them pulled up already, so I know what I'm doing after we get off here, Andrew.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Alex. Thanks, Austin, for that update. And join us next week as well. We'll have another topic for you guys. Feel free to send us emails and reach out to us if you've got any comments as well, or things, or even ideas that you want us to cover. Like we've got a whole schedule of things that we'd like to talk about, but you might also want us to do a little bit of work for you and see what we come up with. And one of those is going to be the carbon economics, kind of presentation. I think that's next week, actually. And we'll put together something for you to just, once again, a basic primer, a foundation to look at, get the brain thinking about different ideas. And it certainly won't be a university level type of course. It's just going to be introducing you to the foundations of what that looks like and what the opportunities are. So thanks, everyone. Have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. And thanks for joining us.
Take care, guys. We'll see you all next week.